So let's get into some specific trees. Specifically, let's talk about ornamental trees. First, we need kind of a definition for an ornamental tree. An ornamental tree tends to be a smaller tree as opposed to a shade tree, which is a great big deciduous tree, or what some people call forest trees, which are great big conifers that should be living in the forest. But ornamental trees tend to be smaller trees. And that is further divided into different kinds of trees. Some of them are called flowering trees, and that would be things like cherries, crabapples, plums, dogwoods, and magnolias. And I'm sure there's a couple others. And then there's another sort of set called patio trees or small trees. And examples of those would be sumacs, Japanese maples, snowdrops, fringe trees, and hawthorns. And then there's trees called understory trees. And, that kind of says what they are. They live under the forest overstory trees or on the edges and are also small trees. Around here, a vine maple would be a good example of that. Of the ornamental trees, there's that subset that you want to prune very, very lightly. Hardly anything at all, in fact. And those would be, and all good arborists and gardeners have this list memorized. Dogwoods, magnolias, cherries, crabapples, and purple leaf plums will explode into water sprouts if you just walk past them with a pair of hand pruners. They are the nervous Nellies of the plant world. They don't want you to prune them very much. Deadwooding is certainly okay, but after that, while you are in there pruning, there should be alarm bells going off in your head and a voice howling at you saying, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. Because if you prune too much, and it doesn't take much, you get water sprouts. And you can't get rid of water sprouts by pruning them. We will talk about how you can get rid of them later in the slideshow. So this is a dogwood. There's a couple of differences between ornamental trees and regular shade trees. One of them is that several of them have multiple trunks or are double-leadered, and sometimes they have a lot of included bark. And with these trees, you don't want to try and switch them into a single-leadered tree without included bark because you'll probably ruin it. And a dogwood is a naturally double-leadered, sort of vase-shaped tree, and this is a good thing. We always want to respect the natural habit of the tree and prune accordingly. And this is just a lovely pink flowering dogwood. And you'll take out a few of the worst crossing rubbing branches and certainly all the deadwood. And one of the things you can do to make them look better, if you so desire, is to take out this sort of duplicating branch that exists. It really mirrors the rest of the branch. And if you take it out, it's just a little lighter and airier. And I would suggest that you don't limb them up very much either because you'll get sun scald. Go really, really gently on your dogwood trees. And then you have your crabapples and your cherry trees. And talk about your crossing rubbing wrong way branches. If you look inside of these, there's just a jillion crossing rubbing wrong way branches. And you have read a book about pruning, so you take them all off. And what happens is you get a nightmare of water sprouts. So your job is just to pick a few of the worst ones, sneak in the summer, take them out, and get out before it notices. This is an example of some of the kind of pruning you might do. You take out the true suckers that grow off of the graft union or the rootstock. For some reason, crabapples comes to mind. And there is no magic cure for them. They just keep coming back. You get a little bit better results if you do it in the summer, but you can never win. And if you look closely in this tree, you'll see a dead stub. That's always a good candidate. And here we're going to open up the center and maybe just thin it out the tiniest little bit. It's still going to have a lot of sort of wrong way branches, but we're going to leave them alone because this is in the category of water sprouts easily, therefore thin lightly. This is an example of somebody's cherry tree, and they've taken a little bit of pruning, but not enough to do a good job. And in fact, they're going to go out and over prune this tree. So here they have taken out all the crossing rubbing branches and reduced the height, and they're mighty pleased with themselves. Except this is what it starts to do in the coming years. You get an explosion of water sprouts. And if you head back your cherry branches too often, they actually start to die. Many of them will actually die off completely. In almost no time, you have a jillion water sprouts. And every fiber in your body says you should cut those off because they're so horrible looking. But if you take them off, you get more. Or if you cut them in half, you get more. There's nothing you can do that you don't get more. So what your job is to sit on your hands and do nothing. If you leave those water sprouts alone long enough, they will turn into honest-to-peat branches. Actually, about 1 in every 3 will turn into a branch, and the other 2 will just sort of die off or pune away. And you can take those off after about 4 years. You can help it look like the picture on the right, and it won't have the incredible beauty of the original, but it will look reasonably tree-like again. Those water sprouts will not arch over and fatten up until they reach the size the tree was before it was over pruned. So don't try to hurry the process. The 4 steps to reconstructive pruning, rehabilitative pruning, are 1, wait, 2, thin, 3, wait, and 4, thin. And the hardest one is wait. So what's the difference between a sucker and a water sprout? Well, generally speaking, suckers are the straight up ugly shoots from below the graft union, and they need to be taken off every year because if you don't, they take over your tree. And the water sprouts are the straight, skinny, ugly shoots that occur at the tips of branches or along branches where it has been over-pruned or mal-pruned. Occasionally, they occur for other reasons, mainly super stress on the tree. For example, if it's a very old tree with compacted roots, it will start sending up water sprouts on internal branches. It's kind of the old age pension plan. And if your branches freeze back, it will send out water sprouts as well. But most of the time, they're man-made because somebody over-pruned or mal-pruned. And here's a mal-pruning job. This is a beautiful branch of a beautiful tree called a magnolia. And this person's going to thin off a great big branch and head back another one, and that's shown by it being blacked out. And this is what it will do next year. Because this water sprouts easily, you want to thin very lightly and avoid size reduction at all costs. But if you just do a couple of small crossing rubbing branches on the inside, and don't do too much, you can take it off. This shows which one to take off. And this is what it looks like afterwards and what it looks like next year because you didn't do too much. And how much is too much? With the list of trees that water sprout easily, I want you to pull way back to like a 16th of the foliage in any one year. Stick to true removal cuts and go easy. You get a little bit more pruning budget if you do it in the summer. On to weeping trees. Weeping trees are fun to prune. They usually come out great. If we want to demonstrate how thinning make things look better, we always try to find some sort of a weeping plant on the job site because they do come up nice. This is a weeping cherry, and it has the unfortunate habit of sending up one of these screwy straight uprights, and people are forever cutting them off, which is not the thing to do. If you take that off, you will just get a whole bunch of straight shoots and you will have messed up your weeping cherry tree. But what you do is take off the ones that are closest to the trunk and some of the ones crossing through various layers. So leave that strange one that's headed up, whether it's on your weeping cherry, your Japanese lace-leaf maple, or any of your other weeping plants. Don't try to stop them from going up, but do thin them out underneath and below. In time, that big branch will lean over and be less upsetting, I promise you. This is a Japanese lace-leaf maple. It's also a weeping tree. Here's one that hasn't been pruned for 20 years, and it's just chock-a-block full of dead leaves and dead wood. And we spent, 1 or 2 man-hours inside this tree, and it looked great when it's done. Here's the exact same tree when it's finished. Mostly we took out dead wood, which is gray, and dead leaves, which we raked out with our fingers. And then we opened it up a little bit. We didn't lion's tail it. We didn't even out the crown. We just gently thinned it throughout. And when you're inside a lot of these ornamental trees, and especially the weeping ones, you'll find that they have a lot of crossing rubbing branches that make it interesting. And if you take them all out, you've not only over-thinned your tree, you've screwed it up. So with these, we're looking for a different set of branches to take out. We're taking out the dead wood always, and it is denoted by the dotted lines. But also there's a branch that's touching the ground. You can see that on the lower right. And you follow that branch to an upper out-facing branch. This is really important. You follow it up to where it meets an upper out-facing branch and cut it off there. And that gives you your clearance off of the ground. And also notice there's another blacked out branch, and we're taking it out because it doesn't curve. It has no taper or good character. It travels too far from its point of origin into some other section, and it also crosses and rubs. But that's not the only reason. It's because it has no taper and it has no grace. And so we're going to thin it out as well. This is a side branch on a weeping plant. Could be anything, happens to be a weeping Japanese lace-leaf maple. And I want you to imagine which of these branches you would take out in order to make it thinner and more open and get it up off of the ground. One of the tricks to thinning is you separate layers so that they aren't running into each other. So these are the branches that the illustrator has chosen to take out and that probably most gardeners or arborists would choose. There's the one that's actually touching the ground. I'm following it up to an upper out-facing limb. And then you'll see that there are 2 branches that are crossing from the upper layer into the lower layer, or we're actually just separating the 2 layers by taking those off. And this is the finished product. We're not taking out everything that crosses and rubs and goes the wrong way, because that would have over-pruned. We're targeting which branches we're going to take out to make it a more elegant shrub/tree. And this is a Japanese upright maple. It's one of the side branches. And we're going to take out the dead wood, which looks like dotted lines. And then we're just going to sort of randomly thin it out. We're going to take the lowest, the ones that hang down too far. That's the lower dark one. And then we're just going to randomly thin it out so that it is less bulky and more airy throughout. And this is the finished product of a Japanese upright maple. And this would also go for general thinning of most of your ornamental trees, and in fact, most of your trees.